far beyond the familiar stars of the Milky Way. Deep within the distant reaches of the Andromeda sector, a cry for help traveled across the void. It was unlike any message received before, a desperate, urgent call from an ancient alien civilization, known as the Valorians. Their worlds, once vibrant and full of life, were now reduced to ashes and silence. The Valorians spoke of a terrible enemy, something neither technology nor armies could stop. A massive swarm of biomechanical creatures, half living, half machine, was tearing through their planets, consuming everything without mercy. These creatures moved like a dark storm, overwhelming entire cities, draining the life from forests, and crushing any resistance. The Valorians had fought bravely, but were losing ground fast. With each passing day, more of their worlds fell into ruin, and hope slipped further away. The Galactic Council, a vast assembly of many species tasked with protecting peace in the galaxy, listened to the Valorian distress signal with concern.
Now the council chambers buzzed with debate.
Some leaders argued that the swarm was too dangerous to confront, too powerful and relentless to be stopped. They feared sending aid would mean risking entire fleets and armies with little chance of success. Others urged action, arguing that ignoring the Valorian plea was a betrayal of the galaxy's duty to protect its own. The discussion stretched for cycles, but the council remained hesitant, unable to find a clear solution. Meanwhile, the swarm continued its advance, bringing destruction wherever it went. Far from these deliberations, on a small blue planet called Earth, the distress call reached the ears of those who would not hesitate, like many other species. Humanity had learned to survive in the harshest conditions. On Earth, there were warriors known as Deathworlders soldiers, forged in the unforgiving crucibles of brutal wastelands, scorched deserts, and frozen mountains. These humans were different. They did not rely on advanced machines or fleets of starships alone. They carried within themselves a fierce will to survive, sharpened by the struggle against their own planet's deadly nature. Two other civilizations, Deathworlders, were both feared and respected. Legends told across star systems of their resilience and raw fighting skill when Earth's defense network intercepted the Valorian call. The message sparked a fire in the hearts of the Deathworlders. Their commanders moved quickly, assembling the elite forces that had faced impossible odds and survived. There was no need for long debates or council meetings here. The Deathworlders understood the meaning of the call, instantly a call for help that demanded action, no matter the cost. They prepared to launch, gathering weapons designed for savage battle. Plasma rifles, flamethrowers, and explosives crafted to rip through the toughest armor. Every Deathworlder carried scars from previous fights, proof of their experience and willingness to face death without fear. To them, the Valorian plea was not just a request. It was a challenge and a chance to prove once again why humans were the galaxy's fiercest survivors. As the Deathworlders boarded their warships, anticipation and tension filled the air. The mission was clear, but dangerous. They would travel to a place far beyond anything they had known, into the heart of enemy territory where the biomechanical swarm spread like a plague. The very thought sent shivers through even the most hardened soldiers. Stories about the swarm described creatures that could adapt quickly, machines that repaired themselves, and creatures that seemed to think as one, moving with a terrifying intelligence. But the Deathworlders did not doubt their own strength. They had been shaped by fire and hardship. They knew how to fight not only with weapons, but with grit and cunning. They would bring Earth's fierce spirit to a battle that many feared was already lost. Meanwhile, back on Earth, families and friends watched the Deathworlders prepare. There was pride mixed with worry. The knowledge that these warriors faced such overwhelming danger brought fear, but also hope. Hope that humanity's best could make a difference where others failed. The world held its breath as the warships ignited their engines, streaking toward the unknown. No one could predict the outcome, but one thing was certain: Earth's Deathworlders were ready to meet the darkness head dash on. As the ships crossed the stars, the Deathworlders trained and strategized. They reviewed what little information they had about the Valorian worlds and the swarm. Commanders stressed the importance of adapting quickly. They knew that traditional tactics would not be enough against an enemy that was part machine, part living organism. Every soldier understood that their greatest weapon was their unpredictability, their human ability to think, change, and fight with passion. The deeper they traveled into the unknown, the heavier the silence became. Each star they passed brought them closer to a battlefield unlike any other. A place where fire and fury would decide the fate of entire civilizations. The first glimpse of the Valorian homeworld shocked the Deathworlders. From orbit, the planet was a scarred wasteland, with vast blackened areas where entire cities had been burned to cinders. Strange metallic structures, twisted and broken, jutted from the ground. The biomechanical swarm had left their mark. Eerie, lifeless silence hung over the ruins. There were survivors, but they were few and weak. The Valorians welcomed the Deathworlders with a mixture of relief and despair. They told stories of how the swarm appeared like a living shadow, striking, without warning and retreating just as fast. Their technology, advanced as it was, had only slowed the swarm, never stopped it. Now, they hoped that the Earth Warriors, these Deathworlders, bred from the harshest conditions, could bring the firepower and ferocity needed to push back the darkness. But even as they landed, the Deathworlders knew the battle ahead would not be easy. The swarm was relentless and coldly efficient. It was not just a fight for territory. It was a fight for survival itself. Every moment held danger. Every shadow could hide an enemy, yet the Deathworlders felt no fear. Their training, their endurance, and their stubborn human spirit prepared them for this moment. They were the last hope in a galaxy that had nearly given up. The Valorian call for help had been answered by fire, by steel, and by the unyielding will of Earth's Deathworlders. The Deathworlders. Ships pierced the heavy atmosphere of the Valorian homeworld, descending through layers of smoke and ash that hung like a thick curtain over a planet scarred by endless war. From orbit, the scene was haunting, a once thriving world now barely recognizable. Its great cities reduced to ruins and twisted metal. Forests turned to blackened skeletons and rivers dried to cracked beds. These aliens were haunted by loss but clung tightly to the possibility of salvation. Placing a wary trust in these strange, fierce newcomers from Earth, the Deathworlders immediately went to work. Spreading out in tactical formations, scanning the environment and gathering vital information. They quickly realized the scale of devastation was far worse than the reports had suggested. The biomechanical swarm had swept through with terrifying efficiency, leaving little behind but ruins and silence. Survivors told grim tales of cities falling in hours, of weapons that melted uselessly against the swarm's ever-changing armor, and of defenders overwhelmed by the relentless tide. The Valorians' technology was sophisticated energy shields, advanced drones, and powerful weapons, but against the swarm, it was like throwing water against fire. The predator creatures adapted rapidly, evolving new defenses as fast as the Valorians could devise new attacks. Traditional battle strategies had failed, and hope had dimmed. Watching this, the Deathworlders felt a familiar rush of resolve. This was exactly the kind of fight they were bred for, were machines and rigid. Tactics faltered. Their strength lay in unpredictability and brutal adaptability. They were not soldiers molded by routine drills, but warriors hardened by the merciless crucibles of Earth's deadliest environments. They understood instinct, improvisation, and the power of sheer will. Their commanders quickly convened with Valorian leaders, sharing observations and planning a new approach. The Deathworlders emphasized speed, aggression, and shock tactics methods that threw the enemy off balance and exploited weaknesses no machine could predict. They prepared to unleash fire and fury like the swarm had never seen before, while the Valorians watched with a mixture of hope and fear. The Deathworlders tested their weapons on captured biomechanical drones, their flamethrowers cutting through, cold metal shells and their explosives shattering hardened armor. Every success raised spirits, but the threat remained immense. The swarm was vast, and the Deathworlders knew this battle would be brutal and costly. Night fell over the broken cities, but the Deathworlders remained vigilant. patrolling and setting traps, determined not to let the predators catch them unprepared. Each quiet moment was filled with tension, as if the very shadows might erupt. With hostile movement, they understood that the true test was yet to come. As the alien night stretched on, slow-burning fire kindled in the hearts of these Earth's warriors, a fire born from the certainty that they were the galaxy's last hope to push back the darkness, to fight not just for the Valorians, but for all life threatened by this relentless predator. The arrival was only the beginning, but it marked a turning point. The Deathworlders were here, and their fierce spirit would bring a new kind of war, one that would shake the very stars. The battle for the Valorian homeworld erupted with sudden, violent fury as the Deathworlders launched their counterattack. They moved like shadows across the shattered landscape, using every lesson learned from Earth's harshest wastelands to wage a war unlike any the galaxy had seen. Their approach was guerrilla-fast, unpredictable, and brutal. The enemy swarm, a living storm of cold metal and unfeeling machines, had grown used to overwhelming their prey with sheer numbers and relentless force, but the Deathworlders refused to be prey. They wielded incendiary devices that spread fire. Like a deadly wildfire, plasma cutters that sliced through the swarm's armored shells, and heavy customized weaponry designed to tear apart the creatures piece by piece. Each strike set the battlefield ablaze, turning ruined cities and scorched plains into blazing infernos that crackled with the sounds of battle. The swarm's usual cold logic faltered against this raw human ferocity. It was a kind of warfare that no machine could predict, a chaotic, fierce storm of resistance that flowed with the fierce spirit of the Deathworlders. As the humans fought, their movements were fluid and deadly, blending stealth with explosive power. They would strike from the shadows, disappearing before the swarm could organize a counterattack, then reappear where the enemy least expected. Their resilience became a weapon as well, for the Deathworlders did not flinch in the face of overwhelming odds. They pushed forward, taking down entire sections of the swarm, sacrificing themselves if needed to save comrades and secure key positions. Each sacrifice was a message to the enemy. Humanity would not break, no matter the cost. The Valorians, watching from behind the front lines, saw their hope grow. The presence of Earth's warriors inspired them, rekindling a fighting spirit that had nearly been lost. Slowly, but surely, alien forces rallied alongside the Deathworlders, learning new tactics and fighting with renewed courage. Together, they became more than survivors. They became an unstoppable force pushing back against annihilation. The battle raged for days, each moment tense and uncertain, but the tide began to turn. Firestorms swept across the battlefield, wiping out swarms that once seemed endless. The Deathworlders' brutal style of combat shocked the biomechanical enemy, forcing it to retreat, regroup, and face a new kind of enemy, one fueled not just by weapons but by unyielding human will. The sky was thick with smoke and fire, but amid the chaos, a spark of victory burned brighter. The Deathworlders knew the fight was far from over, but their savage counterattack had proven that even the darkest threat could be challenged by the fierce spirit of humanity. As the smoke cleared, the survivors, both human and alien, stood together, ready for the next wave of battle, their hearts burning with a new hope that perhaps, just perhaps, they could win this war. After weeks of relentless battle, the Deathworlders and their Valorian allies finally traced the source of the biomechanical swarm's terrifying power, the hive mind. This was no ordinary enemy base or fortress. Instead, it was a massive living structure made of pulsating metal and organic matter fused in an endless, shifting form. It pulsed with a strange, eerie light, as if it were breathing an alien heart that controlled every swarm creature in the region. The Deathworlders gathered their forces, knowing that this would be the deadliest mission yet. Every soldier understood the stakes. If they could destroy the hive mind, the swarm would lose its coordination and strength, leaving it vulnerable to defeat. But reaching the heart of the beast meant breaching the fortress's defenses, a maze of deadly traps, swarming enemies, and ever-changing corridors made from the living metal itself. The assault began at dawn, with the Deathworlders moving like ghosts through the fortress's twisting tunnels. Their weapons glowed with blue plasma and fire, cutting through walls of organic metal as they pushed deeper. The hive mind fought back fiercely, sending waves of biomechanical guardians, half machine and half living tissue, to stop them at every turn. The battle was brutal. Bullets and plasma bolts sparked against shifting armor. The Deathworlders fought with everything they had, falling back only to regroup and attack again. Their commanders adapted tactics in real time, learning to exploit the strange fortress's weaknesses. They discovered that the living metal reacted slowly to sudden, violent changes in temperature and pressure. Using this knowledge, they rigged explosive charges and incendiary devices that made the fortress itself unstable, cracking its defenses wide open. The Valorian engineers worked alongside the Deathworlders, hacking into the hive mind's communication systems and feeding false signals to confuse it. But the hive mind was cunning and relentless. It responded with deadly precision, directing the swarm with sharp, coordinated attacks designed to crush the intruders before they could reach the core. Each corridor became a battleground, and every step forward was paid for in blood and sweat. Yet, the Deathworlders' fiery determination never wavered. They fought not just for survival, but for the hope of ending the nightmare once and for all. Their raw human will pushed them beyond exhaustion. The Valorian allies drew strength from the humans' courage, matching their ferocity in refusing to surrender. Finally, after days of grueling combat, the Deathworlders reached the central chamber of Vast. It's a glowing core that throbbed with energy, controlling every biomechanical drone in the swarm. It was like the beating heart of the Predator, surrounded by layers of pulsating armor and guarded by the deadliest creatures yet. The Deathworlders moved as one, coordinating their assault with precision and savage intensity. Incendiary grenades erupted in brilliant flames, plasma cutters sliced through metal and flesh alike, and heavy weapons tore at the fortress's core. The hive mind fought back with everything it had, directing a final desperate defense that threatened to overwhelm the attackers. But the Deathworlder spirit was unbreakable. They pressed forward, inch by inch, until the core was exposed. In a moment that seemed to stretch forever, they unleashed a massive, explosive strike eruption of fire and energy that shattered the fortress's defenses and crippled the hive mind itself. With the core destroyed, the swarm lost its cohesion. Biomechanical creatures faltered, confused and directionless, and the deathly tide that had threatened to consume entire worlds began to collapse. The battlefield fell eerily silent, broken only by the distant crackling of fires and the heavy breaths of the exhausted warriors. The Deathworlders and their allies had done what many believed impossible. They had broken the heart of the swarm. Though many lay wounded or lost, their victory was clear. The threat that had haunted the galaxy for so long was finally shattered. As they stood among the ruins of the living fortress, the Deathworlders felt a deep sense of triumph mixed with sorrow. They had faced a nightmare and survived. Now, the path was open for the Valorians to rebuild, and for the galaxy to breathe again. The battle had tested every limit of human and alien strength, but it had also proven that fierce will and unyielding courage could conquer even the darkest of foes. The war was not yet over, but the heart of the swarm no longer beat. The Predator swarm, once a terrifying force that had seemed unstoppable and endless, now faltered and retreated into the dark reaches of space, shattered and leaderless. Without the hive mind to guide them, the biomechanical creatures scattered, their terrifying unity broken, leaving the Valorian worlds finally free from the relentless assault. The once vibrant planets, though deeply scarred and battered by the war, began to show faint signs of life returning. Amidst the ruins, the Valorians started the slow, painful process of rebuilding their civilization. Their cities, burned and shattered, were now places of hope rather than despair. They honored the Deathworlders, the fierce warriors from Earth who had come through fire and fury to save them from extinction. Statues and monuments were erected, telling the story of the Earthlings, who fought not with the most advanced technology, but with sheer will, courage, and an unbreakable spirit. The Deathworlders, battle-worn and weary, prepared to return home. They carried the weight of their sacrifices, but also the pride of a mission accomplished. Their legacy was clear, not just of destruction and war, but of hope and resilience. They had faced a cosmic nightmare and emerged victorious, proving that even the darkest threats could be overcome with determination and unity. As their ships lifted off the battered planet, leaving behind allies who looked up with gratitude and respect, the Deathworlders knew their journey was far from over. Back in the grand halls of the Galactic Council, the attitude toward Earth had shifted dramatically. Where once there had been hesitation and doubt, now there was respect mingled with caution. The Earth Warriors had shown that they were not merely survivors of a harsh planet, but a powerful force capable of altering the fate of the galaxy. Their reputation had grown, and with it, the understanding that humanity's fierce protectors would stand ready against any future darkness. The stars stretched wide and vast, filled with unknown dangers and mysteries, but the Deathworlders stood prepared. Their battle had forged them into something more than soldiers. They were a symbol of hope in a cold and dangerous universe as they journeyed back toward their homeworld. Their minds were already on the next challenge, their hearts burning with the fire of survival and the strength of countless battles fought. The galaxy would remember this day, when Earth's warriors answered a desperate call for help and brought light where there had only been shadow. And though the future was uncertain, one truth remained clear. As long as the Deathworlders stood, no darkness could last forever.